Every day in our country, our world, we are surrounded by images and words that divide us. Does it have to be that way?
Nobody likes to be called names. Nobody wants to be considered an enemy of the state. Or I don't even want to be my neighbor's enemy. I don't want to be enemies with anybody.
It's the color of your jersey, not the name on your jersey, that matters anymore. And that we've got to get out of.
There are voices in America trying to be heard who believe we all need to possess a sense of honor when we communicate. It is called civility.
How do we learn to talk to each other? At home, in the workplace, in the country.
Civility allows people to converse even if they have radically different points of view on things.
Civility in a democracy is about believing in the idea of engaging enthusiastically, energetically through disagreement. That's what we're supposed to do.
There are some people of different faiths, families, friends, who put differences aside.
Especially right now, what's happening in our world, the conversation needs to be, how can we include everybody and love everybody?
Again and again, what happens is that you don't change people's minds, but you change the relationship.
Join us now for Civility, changing the conversation. Every year in Salt Lake City, a remarkable gathering takes place. Leaders and members of dozens of faiths lift their voices in song and prayer. The Salt Lake Interfaith Roundtable was created for the 2002 Olympic Winter Games. And each year, the members create a month of events to introduce the citizens of Utah to all religious traditions here. One of the popular gatherings over the years is a common word between us, food and friendship at Khadijah Mosque.
And they want to say to the Muslims that, you know, we are seeing negative things being said about you, and we want to give you support in showing that we don't take everything that is being said that is negative at face value.
It's so important, especially now in today's world, that we communicate with each other, that we respect each other, that we help each other. And that's why we're here tonight. We're celebrating with the Muslim community. We love them.
Sometimes that happens in even more difficult situations. At a hospital in northern Israel, a doctor comforts his patients. They are Syrians. In the past 3 years, more than 2,000 Syrians have crossed the border for treatment.
Everyone that we treated it exactly as we treated Israelis.
The patients hide their faces terrified of what would happen if the Syrian government knew they sought help in Israel.
Maybe our treatment may be helpful for building peace.
Followers of Christ should be examples of civility.
During spring commencement at BYU Hawaii, Elder Dallin H. Oaks asked the graduates to step away from hate and contentious communications.
All of the inhabitants of this earth are children of God. Use that knowledge to push back against the worldly prejudices that preach hate or hostility toward other nations, ethnic groups, or even political parties.
In Salt Lake City, both the faces of the refugees and the volunteers serving them are diverse.
I think it brings us together like family. I've noticed this works so beautiful here that everyone can be who they really are.
The volunteers are mostly immigrants waiting for citizenship, understanding they once were where these new arrivals are.
After I finish this working as a volunteer every Tuesday, I'm go home very happy because I saw happy faces. And some of them, they hug me, which is like a vitamin, happy vitamin for me for the week.
Dr. Leslie Whitehead was a part of that chaplaincy program during the Olympics and has modeled her faith ministry here based on what she saw and felt.
They really encouraged us not to divide people by language, country, religion, but instead to really bring everyone together.
So this is truly interfaith.
Friendships formed during that Olympic period. These three couples, Jewish, Muslim, and Hindu, have become close over the last 15 years.
When things go wrong in the world, we can reach out to each other
And we actually seem to have a common understanding because we all come from different walks of life trying to work within a community of many different faiths.
We're there for each other, we follow the golden rule, and that we all have a feeling that of accountability to a higher being, and thereby we are all one.
It's just not bringing together. Whenever somebody needs, we are there. They stand up together to help, whether it's a difficult time or it's...
And the circle is ever widening as they invite more faiths to join their celebrations.
And the musical tribute is one of the better ones that makes it all the smaller people who are not part of this membership also come together.
What they have created is a sanctuary where there is acceptance.
And there was a discussion.
A board meeting,
about onions and garlic.
Right.
and this discussion went on for half an hour and had something to do with separating the ground between the cultural center and the Hindu temple. And I thought to myself, these people are so Jewish. That's exactly what would happen in our faith.
They don't let religion, politics, or anything else come between them.
They are more than a faith contact. We have become almost family, right?
From strangers to now family. Go make a friend of another faith, they say. It's good for the soul. Coming up, it feels as if the political divide has never been greater. How do we find common ground? George Washington wrote 110 rules of civility for himself when he was 17. First, every action done in company ought to be with some sign of respect to those that are present.
Number 22, show not yourself glad at the misfortune of another, though he were your enemy.
Most of us remember this encounter at a Trump rally. The man who threw that punch ended up in court. But then forgiveness and a handshake that turned into a hug.
We've seen bad times before, but we're resilient enough as a society because of our underpinnings and our respect one for another.
In 2010, about 1,000 citizens representing all 50 states met in New York to start a nonpartisan movement titled No Labels. Ambassador and former Utah Governor John Huntsman Jr. and former Senator Joe Lieberman are the co-chairs. The ambassador points to Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich, Orrin Hatch and Ted Kennedy, from opposite opinions who worked together. He says, as Americans, we reinvent ourselves.
It's a uniquely American trait, and I love that part. And it always allows me to remain optimistic, regardless of how bad things can get, because we've been there before. And we'll be there again, and we'll always find a way out. We all share a common destiny, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And there was never a guarantee that this country, this model of ours, would last forever, and that we would all prosper forevermore as Americans. You got to work at it.
Amen, says Mark Gerzon, founder and president of Mediators Foundation and author of Leading Through Conflict, Global Citizen, and Reunited States of America.
The election hasn't changed my belief that the relationship between the parties is far more important than which party wins. It hasn't changed my belief in respect. It hasn't changed my belief in learning. So when I get triggered by something, I just remind myself, my core values are my core values. And if they're the right core values, they should be able to handle whatever happens.
John Steiner is a member of the Bridge Alliance team who worked to transform the political process from elections to governance.
Civility is the foundation of, I think, the country many of us want. And without that, we can't have debate and real dialogue. We can't come to the table to make better decisions. We can't elect leaders who really put country before party.
How do you answer the question, are you a better American because of your faith? A Utah interfaith group gathered to find some answers.
If in the future you're having a conversation about what does it mean to be American,
can I be best friends with someone who holds a truth claim that I fundamentally disagree with? Absolutely, because there are other things that we are going to agree upon, and we can work on those things, we can be friends around those things, and we want to bring that option back to American discourse.
The young people here are not as worried about the heightened rhetoric in society or on social media.
There's a lot of emotion and a lot of feelings and a lot of frustrations that are, in a sense, justified. You know, I think like we need to have that time to vent. I feel like as time progresses, we will be able to have those more civil conversations.
It'll just take time, and there needs to be awareness. That's why this project is so great.
I am also a new citizen of this country. And with that said, like, I have all this passion towards it. You know, I honor this country and I want to make it my own.
Representatives Patrice Arendt, a Democrat, and Becky Edwards, a Republican, believe in service and civility.
It takes mileage with each other, it takes trust, it takes relationship building, and all of that is incredibly important to the collaborative process. And without that, I don't know that it happens.
I think when we work together, and there are good people on both sides of the aisle, we learn from each other, we come up with better legislation.
Democracy is lively, they agree, and the rhetoric is less harsh on Utah's Capitol Hill than it is in Congress.
When I disagree with someone's policy and I'm going to get up on the floor and speak about it, I try to talk to them about it first. I try and warn them, try to say, look, I'm going to vote against your bill. Let me explain why. Let me explain my concerns. And sometimes I can be convinced that I'm wrong, which is great. I learn a lot that way.
You can vehemently disagree and have it not be personal because you have a deep and abiding respect for each other. And I think we need to sort of reframe what it means to have a noisy dialogue, and that it can still be civil.
Coming up, who can you trust? What is the role of media in America?
I am really grateful to be able to go into people's homes that trust me enough to let them put their stories in print or on television. That is an honor. And there are obligations that come with it.
Jeff Benedict is a New York Times best-selling author, writer for Sports Illustrated, television and film producer, and a Latter-day Saint.
I have a motto in journalism that actually works well in life. It applies in faith and politics too, which is just, it's 3 words: listen, don't judge.
Jeff and his family participated at the Million Women March in New York City. In that crowd of 400,000, he spotted only one man wearing a Make America Great Again cap. He shook his hand and thanked him for being there.
I explained to my kids, I said, listen, when I see a man in a red Donald Trump cap, I said, I don't see an enemy. What I see is I see my brother, and I see my uncle, and I see my cousin, and I see the guy that's fixing our house right now, and I see one of my very best friends on earth, because they all voted for him. And for me, like, we're all Americans here. Like, at the end of the day, the enemies that America has are real. We got some real enemies. It's not each other. Like, we are, at the end of the day, we're on the same team.
As citizens, our anger spills out everywhere. The town hall meeting has now become a free-for-all. But Liz Joyner's project, the Village Square, has brought diverse groups and people with opposing ideologies together in Tallahassee, Florida, for a decade now.
We have found that political differences on national issues can disappear, or at the very least, the gap can narrow.
People who disagree with us are actually our partners in solving problems. Even when it's difficult, they're our partners. They see things that we don't see.
Looking at the church as a place where we are called to come together.
Scott Hayashi is the bishop of Utah's 6,000 Episcopalians. He was so concerned about the current political climate that he issued a pastoral letter to plead for civility.
That might help people to remember who they are and remember that the person with whom they be in complete disagreement is still a friend, a family member, and a beloved person in the eyes of God.
As an historian and author, Richard Turley has spent decades telling the story of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Now he is the managing director of the church's public affairs department.
I believe that the free flow of information ultimately leads to the development of the best ideas.
Recently, the church's website included a supportive statement on the First Amendment.
The First Amendment makes possible the free exercise of religion. It makes possible and assures that no one religion will be favored over another by the government. It also makes possible freedom of speech, which permits free news reporting and free discussion in the public square.
Professor David Vergobi teaches media law and ethics at the University of Utah.
We have to have that give and take and the civility of accepting, even if you don't agree, accepting and listening to the other side. To be a credible news agency, you have to maintain that credibility and its accuracy. And it is fairness, and it is balance.
And civility is part of the discussion in newsrooms now. KSL TV News, News Radio, and Deseret News reporters and managers meet throughout the day to decide which stories to cover.
Many Americans get all of their information online or from social media. Whitney Evans manages Utah's largest news website, KSL.com.
Incivility abounds online. So we take that into account and realize if we can at least change one person's perception and if we can help create a civil conversation along the way, let's do that. Let's engage where we can.
Evans oversees the tone of each article, down to the adjectives, making sure there is no perception of bias.
Our job is to present people with information and then help them make an educated decision and be informed consumers of media.
Chandler Guzzle is a producer for KSL TV and News Radio, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat sites.
It's kind of my job to calm that situation down, make sure that everyone understands what's going on, and also feeling like their comments are still important. We've had times where it turns completely around and they say, "Thank you for your response. We really appreciate the feedback, and thank you just for letting us know that you even read our message and care."
It is no longer, she says, just the 24-hour news cycle, but more like a 24-second one. And she's on board.
It's exciting because it is such a change and there's so much to learn. Like so many things that we don't even know that are going to happen in the future, and I get to be a part of that.
And coming up, your family and friends. Is a lack of civility hurting those relationships? The Civility Experiment. A filmmaker brought 6 strangers together in New York City's Central Park to discuss civility and kindness.
Everybody's born with the potential that they're a good person.
While talking, Arabelle worried that a homeless man would steal her bike.
I actually was quite abusive to him. I wasn't very nice. I told him exactly what I thought about him.
At the end of filming, the director kept the camera rolling and asked the homeless man to step in.
And how do you feel about civility?
I think it's more ways to be good than bad. We just don't exercise the goodness that's instilled in us.
I hope that you will look at people just a little differently and understand that what one homeless man said in Central Park can honestly change your whole view on humanity.
We all judge strangers, but what about people we love? In a year that has divided Americans, the saddest situation is the tearing apart of families and friends.
We need to do better for each other. And that's what I dream about, is finding the way to work well together.
Joan Blades is a professional mediator who created Living Room Conversations in 2010. This online project helps families, friends, and neighbors who have distinct differences find common ground.
Kind of going off of what Kayla said,
This gathering took place in Utah in 2015.
Once you like someone, you have some sense of who they are, you hear them in a completely different way, which is powerful. Listening is so much more powerful than many people realize.
These siblings disagree on politics, religion, and lifestyle, but have never let those issues come between them.
Somebody asked one of our siblings, "So what was it like growing up in your family?" And the answer was, "Have you read Lord of the Flies?"
The Diazevedo children are a lively bunch. There are actually 9 of them.
That was the culture that we grew up in, was that family matters and you help your brothers and sisters, and there's so many of us that we all have to do our part and nobody gets left out.
They have their own families and professions now.
We haven't gotten stuck during those times of conflict or disappointment or grief, that we've all wanted to continue growing as people.
There's something to be curious about, like what can I learn from their experience? And I think that's a really amazing gift that we now give to our kids.
They credit their parents Lex and Linda Diazevedo, who are divorced but keep the family united.
They are kind and respectful, and that is incredible for us to see that example as well.
Sarah remembers her mother's reaction when she wanted to open a tattoo parlor.
It's legal, right? Okay. It's like, okay, well, you've always drawn all over everything, so okay. And then, well, and you can make good money, right? Okay, yes, like I'm on board. Yes, you have my permission.
Love, they believe, is more important than being right.
I feel like we don't judge each other and we support each other. Usually like when people feel like they make a mistake, they already kind of know that and they don't need family members pointing shame and guilt. We just help each other out.
And what about our children? Jim Feerick's 4th grade class at Jackson Elementary in Salt Lake created a Civility project. Below their photos, we the people are individual statements.
My statement is we the people don't need violence. I choose that because we can talk to people. They can do a discussion.
I was really impressed by the thought that the kids put into it and how personal it became to them and how proud they are of what they've created.
We the people help all, protect all. We are peacemakers. We are very benevolent. We keep families united.
Without civility, like kindness and respect, it would be chaos. Like everybody would be a hater and not a liker and a lover.
People can do it and they can try to do what we said to do.
People need to be more kind and helpful because all United States is kind of getting out of hand a little.
And George Washington's Civility Rule 110. Labor to keep alive in your breast that little spark of celestial fire called conscience.
Civility, changing the conversation.